All right, so our snow is dried and we're ready to start adding to some trees. While I was waiting for it to dry, what I did was I poked out some of these little bits and pieces that are in the trees. You're gonna wanna make sure that you completely clean them up and take all those little bits and pieces out before we start adding them to our card. So I've got them all cleaned here, and I realized I did a little bit of a speaking error. So I said that I had cut 2 of the big trees. One of them is actually this side of the die, and the second one is this side of the die. So I happen to have an extra of the big trees right now. Don't necessarily need it, but that's okay. I always prefer to have extras rather than not enough. So the very first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut this big tree off of this clump here. I don't need to do anything to that one. This one here, it's a little bit angled and you're gonna see it, so I'm just gonna take my scissors and kind of curve it a little bit there, and that one is gonna go here. I'm gonna align them both up right with the edge here. So because I'm lining it up with the edge, I don't want to be putting glue on this side because that's going to be exposed. So I'm going to put some glue just on the bottom, and then just little bits and pieces going up this side here. And really less is more when it comes to this. You don't want to add too much. So there we go. And I've got the glue going up the center, so I'm going to make sure that that glue is attached to the cardstock part on the side here of the card. Putting it up as high or as low as you want. This one here, I have it higher than I did here. Personal preference, neither one is right or wrong. My main thing is I'm trying to hide where the join is between the mountains and the hills. So now I have this one here. I'm going to attach here, so I'm gonna put glue on this side here of the trees, and then just the bottom part of this little layer here. And I love this die set just simply because it's got so many different sizes of trees within the same set, and it's really quite easy to cut them apart and use little clumps here and there. It gives you a lot of variety when you're creating and then you have the same style of trees. You could use different tree die sets, but you kind of want to make sure that they have the same or a similar style to them. All right, so this one here, this is the lighter color. I'm going to add it right there. I'm just going to cut that part off there. I might be trimming just a little bit farther. I'm going to just be adding glue to the bottom part of this piece here. Again, I want to make sure that it's on this front part here of the card. Just a little bit in, and the one thing that I'm making sure is I want this tree to be lower than this one. I don't want them to be ending at the same height because that looks a little bit unnatural. You see I've got some extras here, so I'm just going to snip that off right now. There we go. And then this one here that's at the end of that, I'm going to add that right in here towards the bottom. So I'm going to snip here, and that's really the same place that I snipped for that very first dark tree. And I'm just going to add it right in here. And then I'm going to glue it down and then cut off the excess. If I were to glue it right in here, it just looks better if some of it goes over the edge of the card. Doesn't need to be the entire tree, just some of the tree going over the side of the card there. There we go. I'm going to cut that off. If it's easier for you, you could flip the card over and use the side of the card as a guideline. Make sure that's down there so that it can dry. I see I have a little bit going over the bottom of the card. I'm going to snip that off. Oops. There we go. And now I'm going to work on this side of the card here. So I've got my other piece here. What I am going to do, I'm trying to decide which piece I want. I'm going to use this section first, and then I'm going to use this tree no, I'm going to use this tree here. So I'm going to take this here and I'm going to actually cut it right here. I want it to have kind of a natural looking edge. So I don't want to have a straight edge because that's not going to look natural at all. I'm just going to cut this here because whatever's behind here is either going to be cut off or it's going to be, well, it's going to be cut off, the excess is going to be cut off, and then the extras are going to be covered with this other tree here. So I'm going to add some glue there. And you can go back after this is all completely dried if there's some tips to trees that you think should be glued down. Because there's a place to glue them down, you can go back and do that. When I start, I'd rather have less rather than more and have to go and add some glue rather than having too much glue and end up having a piece that is not going to stick to anything and then end up compromising my card. So I'm gonna take the edges off here. Especially on this side of the card, it's easier to flip it over rather than trying to do it like this. And now I'm going to glue this tree on here. Now, if I glue this right at the bottom, the trees are almost the same height. Here, they're almost the same height here. So I'm gonna lift it just a little bit higher. This piece here that's behind there is gonna cover that bottom part there. And I want to make sure that I'm gluing the side that is attached to the card and not the side that's going to go off the edge there. And typically when I'm creating these, like right now while I'm doing it on video, I'm just putting it down and then working on the next part. Typically I will sit there and I will hold a few things in place just because sometimes they want to pull up. There we go. So all of those trees that I want to attach are attached. And I am going to cut that excess off. There we go. You could add more trees in the center if you want, fill it up a little bit more, but I wanted to have kind of an open area for these deer to kind of stand and just kind of for them to be the focal point. I think if you fill trees in here, let me grab another one of the die cuts. It's just going to be a little bit too, well, I don't have my deer die cut yet. It's going to be a little bit too busy with the deer there. Again, personal preference, try it if you want, even just lay it out just to see if you like it with more trees in there before adding the deer. I will see you in the next video. Next video, we're going to do the deer and add them to the card.